Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Xa Talk Show. Today is 2021, December 9th, and we are going to talk about, so here's today's topic. We are going to talk about the Newline convention and complexities and tedium of the Newline convention. So yesterday I actually, I was writing a PowerShell script to generate my Emacs tutorial. So you are looking at my PowerShell script that generates an Emacs tutorial. So, one of the things I want to do is that I want to replace these multiple lines. Here is a here doc, here string syntax. So anyway, I want to replace a string of multiple lines of all files in a directory. And it didn't work, so there's this complexity. I was puzzled, why does it not work? And I spent 2 hours, reading about it. Eventually, I find out why it didn't work, because of the complexities of the Newline convention in the coding industry, lots of the complexities. So I'm going to tell you all about it today, and there are many interesting issues about this issue. Okay, so if you have common questions, post the answer here. Okay, hello Mo. So let's begin. Okay, so let's go to today's talk show notes, and open and close that. Open today's talk show notes. So let me tell you what is the problem. Okay, first of all, the Newline convention. Now, you guys may not know. Now, the Newline convention is that, let's go here so you can see. So I already have an article. This is written in 2010 about the Newline convention. So in Windows, for example, on Linux, for example, Unix, Linux, Mac OS 10, you represent the Newline by, for example, let me show you. Okay, so magnify and turn on white space. You see, so those are new lines. So wait, hold on a second. Let me turn on global highlight mod. So you see those paragraph symbol represent, there's a new line. That's a character. That's just a character, indicates a new line. And in Unix, Linux, Mac OS 10 convention, that character is called line feed. Okay, line feed. So in Emacs, in my talk show, I'm gonna talk about several things, the technical computational issue, the conventions, tips about using Emacs, about programming language design. So today we'll talk about Emacs, Lisp, PowerShell, Bash, Perl, PHP. So usually I talk about several things related. So it's like, multidiscipline. What's called multidiscipline, which is how things should be. You don't just focus on, computer science or whatever. Multidiscipline. So in running into this issue, there are several very interesting things I discovered. So anyway, so you see this Newline character. That's a character. Okay. So in Unix, Linux, Mac OS 10, the convention is to use the line feed character. What's called line feed. Okay. So that's Unicode code point 10 in decimal. Okay, so or ASCII code point 10. By the way, ASCII and Unicode, they have the same code point for ASCII characters. So it's equivalent to say Unicode code point 10. It's the same thing as ASCII code point 10. So anyway, so in Unix, the Newline is represented by this character, one single character, line feed. However, on Windows, you use two characters. One of them is a carriage return, which is ASCII 13, then followed by line feed. So you have to use two characters to represent a new line. So these characters are, so if you don't know what they are, so this is before Unicode. So you have this ASCII table. Common and questions. Okay. Now ASCII table. So when you have a character, this is fundamentals of computing. So if you are new, if you are a student, you need to know this. Programmer, if you are new, so so you have, so any character is represented, on computers you have to represent them eventually as a sequence of ones and zeros, bits. So you need a convention to convert each character to say which character is represented by what number. So ASCII table is one of the earliest convention. So for example, the character A is decimal 65. So let me show you. Okay, so for example, let's open a new document. Okay, so let's show you a. So I type A. So you move there, and in Emacs you call describe character. So you can see the command I called describe char. Okay, so you call describe character, and it will show you information about the character under the cursor. So in this case, you see that's capital A, Latin character, capital A. You can see the code point is 65 in decimal, and then you have octal notation and hexadecimal. So you see 65, the character capital A is 65 in ASCII as well as in Unicode. Okay, so you need this, this encoding system. You need a standardized way so that computers don't get confused. So that's a representation of the ASCII character A and A, B, C, D, and all the letters and punctuations. But you also have what's called control characters. For example, let's show some, for example, tab, okay? So I enter tab, something, so you can see that's a tab. Now let's turn on the show white space. You can see that a triangle. And now if I call describe char, you can see it says tab. And then you have the character name, character tabulation. That's the old name. The new name is just, anyway, that's a digression. Okay, so anyway, so this tab character, that's one of the so-called unprintable characters. So you also have these characters. For example, Newline, you also need to represent it in some way. So that's an unprintable character. Normally you don't see it, you see. So you have Newline, and you also have horizontal tab, Newline, and for example, space, something here. So you have a space. Now called describe char. You can see it's code point 32, and the character name is space. So you need this is called encoding. Okay, you need a standardized way to represent each character, and also invisible characters such as space, represent them by a number. So that's basically what encoding is about. And one of the earliest standard is called ASCII, from American Association of American Computing Association, something like that, from 1960s. So ASCII, okay. And today, of course, you have Unicode. Now, hello, Alan. So encoding, you have the encoding standardized encoding to represent characters. Okay, so let's post here. Okay, so we have a record of what we talked about. So we just talked about encoding. Okay, ASCII table. So back to the Newline. So it turns out, because historical complexities, the development of computers from teletype. So you have, you have lots of complexities. But anyway, so in Unix, you represent the Newline by this line feed character, and on Windows, you represent the Newline by a carriage return character, then followed by a line feed character. Okay, so it's shown here. So let's look at the control characters. So you can see line feed is here. Okay, so ASCII number 10, line feed. Then so that's line feed. So that's a tab. The tab. There's also vertical tab. Then there's form feed. Form feed, by the way, is interesting because in Emacs you have Okay, so you can see that is using Emacs, but anyway, that's digression. So you also have carriage return, CR, usually represented by the word CR, character number 13. Then you also have characters for delete. For example, 127, that's a character for delete. Essentially, when you press the delete key, the backspace key, your text editor, so terminal, usually sends that. And you also have escape characters. So you have, one, this is history. So you have kind of lots of these. To today is kind of confusing. So you have line feed, you have form feed, then you have carriage return. So anyway, the bottom line is that on Linux, Unix today, you use line feed to represent new line. And on Windows, you use carriage return plus line feed, 2 characters to represent new line. And on the Mac, the Mac OS Classic, that is before year 2002, you use just carriage return. So one of the interesting thing I learned yesterday during 3 hours, looking into this issue, is that in the Unix, was it Plan 9 or was it Inferno? The operating system created by Rob Pike and other people. Rob Pike is one of the traditional Unix people, Unix philosophy, and he created Golang. Golang, I truly love the design of Golang. And Rob Pike is also known as an inventor of the UTF-8 encoding system, which is compatible with ASCII. So anyway, so in the operating system I learned yesterday, was it Inferno or was it Plan 9? They also use carriage return to represent the new line. So here is several interesting issues. So from a programming design point of view or protocol design point of view, or if you are creating your own operating system, which one is the best? So you have the question. So that's an interesting question for all those of you interested in design. And and in programming language design or protocol design, so which one of these convention is the best? Now, apparently, the Windows convention using 2 characters is kind of lame because it's inefficient. Why do you need to use 2 characters? But there's a historical reason, which I also learned about yesterday, actually. So historically, this, before you have computers, you have teletype, you have the Morse code, So anyway, so the carriage return followed by line feed, that is the convention. So back then, that is the standard convention. Not until the operating system called Motex, they screwed up with this convention. They're gonna say, oh, we're gonna start new, we're gonna screw history. And so they created this line feed convention for new line. Then, so that's Motex, the operating system, Motex, okay? Actually I learned this yesterday. So, Motex is heavily involved with Emacs development. In fact, I about 10 years ago, I exchanged email with one of these guys who is on Motex, who created a version of Emacs or something. One of the least machine people. But anyway, you have Motex operating system. Then Unix, is a pun of Motex. Unix is created after Motex. So Motex uses the convention of LF, screwing history. Then Unix followed, So that is a history. So I mean, too many of the open source and Linux phonetics idiots, to them, most of you will think, oh, Microsoft fucked up. That's not true. Okay, if you wanna say who is a fuckhead that created a incompatibility, that's Motex and Unix, okay, and which Linux followed, then Mac OS X followed, because Mac OS X is, based on BSD kernel, okay, it's not exactly a Linux, It's not exactly a Unix. Again, the issue of which operating system is Unix, that's a very complex question. So anyway, so you have these conventions. But Mac OS Classic, the operating system, which is overseen by Steve Jobs, the great guy for design, he's got the eye for design. He saw the Unix convention, he saw the Microsoft convention, and he decided, that's bad. We're just gonna use carriage return. This is actually the most logical from a design point of view. So if you're gonna design an operating system from scratch, and if you don't care about compatibility with convention or tradition, you're gonna start fresh. You want the best design. Carriage return is the best character to use. Okay, so that's Mac OS Classic. Pretty much, that means before year 2002. So you have these conventions, for Newline, and that creates endless problems, because you are often endless problems. When you send a file out to someone else, and if he's using a different operating system, you got problems. Like sometimes lines will show, you'll show things like that. Let me show you. Okay, so you'll see things like, okay, so let's open a new buffer. You'll see for something, for example, I have something, you send this file to your friend or something, but they will see it when they open. Let me show you. When they open in their editor, they will see something like that, or sometimes like that. Okay, so it creates lots of headache. And many tools, for example, FTP and many Unix tools, sometimes they provide, or Git, even Git. Let me show you Git, okay. Git, they create lots of problems. So let's see, recently this year, I wrote an article about the issue of line ending in Git. So Git also provide a way to kind of automatically solve the problem, like some kind of automatic convention. Okay, so where's my article? Yeah, so over here, so Git Newline config for Microsoft Windows. So if you are on Windows, if you all you do is on Linux, Arch Linux or Gentoo or whatever, or tiling window managers. If all you do is on Linux, happy go Linux, you are fine, because you are confined in a hole. But if you talk among different people, then you have this issue. So for Git, which is, by the way, GitHub owned by Microsoft, so you need to convert the Newline issue. For example, your team is using some of them is using Unix, some of them is using Windows, and some of them is using let's say Plan 9, which uses the CR, the carriage return convention. So you need to. So this is how you can set up Git to convert things automatically. I'm talking about several of these things. Let's go to talk show and write it down. So what we talked about. So today, we have that show in browser, turn off the line. It's confusing. Turn off the white space, show in browser at bottom. So we added a outside of it. So it needs to be inside the main. So we just talked about Git on this issue. So this is a very widespread issue. And on Linux, on Unix, by the way, you have the tool Unix to DOS, okay? DOS to Unix, okay? If you search it, I don't have an article on that. So if you search it on Linux, you have this tool to convert these file line ending conventions. Okay, so no, I'm not on Linux, so I don't have those tools. So let's see, maybe let's try that. Get command help help GCM get command. So get command is analogous to the Unix which command. So it will show you if you have the command or not. So GCM Unix to DOS, no, I don't have it. GCM DOS to Unix. So that's the tool on Unix that allows you to change the file encoding, and of course you can do that in Emacs too. So I have a full article on that. So anyway, so far I have explained about the ASCII. So we have explained the ASCII encoding and Unicode UTF-8 encoding, and what is so we have explained Unicode encoding and control characters. Okay, so we have explained these things so far, and we have explained line ending conventions. Okay, and so this is quite complex issue because another issue about Newline is that typically a file, you have the question whether the end of a file, so end of a file, should it followed by a new line or not? If you view the new line as a separator between lines, then you don't need a new line at the end of file. But if you regard new line as a kind of line termination symbol, then you need a new line at the end of each file. And in Unix, you do it's required. So this introduces another complexity, because, for example, if I have Emacs, so I saw some of the line ending, I can just replace them. But when you save the file, it automatically adds a new line of particular convention to your file. So that creates lots of problem, because you thought you just removed all or some new line, but when you save, it just silently added to the end of a file. So you have to pay attention to that. So that's about that. So and in this article, I tell you how to convert, okay, between the line ending conventions in Emacs. Then I also show you a Emacs Lisp script that allows you to convert all files in a directory from one style to another, the line ending convention. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, so we got a new file, for example. Let's say, okay, so let's remove that. Let's just say something. So you want to know. So first of all, let me tell you, in Emacs, when you see something in a buffer, the line ending is always line feed. Okay, doesn't matter whether you are on Windows, on Linux, on Mac, on anywhere. In a buffer, the line ending is always line feed. But when you save the file, Emacs will automatically convert or transform whatever and save it to a file, a sequence of bytes. Okay, that's what Emacs does. But in the buffer, you will always just see. So in the buffer, that character is always just line feed. And okay, so the way Emacs works is that, so you can see what is the current buffer encoding. So let's show. Okay, so so here's what you do. You can see here, you see near the mode line, it says Unix. So that means this buffer is currently using the Unix line ending convention when Emacs save this to a file. Okay, that's important, because otherwise Emacs always use LF. That this configuration only matters when you save to the file. Okay, So so how do you control? So this indicate it shows here. So how do you know which convention is using by this variable buffer file encoding system? Okay, so we can do describe variable, then type buffer file coding system. Okay, enter. So it tells you that its value for this buffer is UTF-8 Unix. That means encoded using UTF-8 and use the Unix line ending convention. Okay. So this variable buffer file encoding system is the variable that tells Emacs when you save the file which line ending convention it should use. Okay, so if you want to convert this line ending to, let's say, Windows, so right now it's Unix, you can see in the mode line. So if I want to convert it, you call this command, set buffer file coding system. So let's do it. So after we do it, you will see this Unix disappear. Okay, so set buffer file coding system, enter. So I can type, if you type tab, then you have all these, tens of encoding systems. Typically you want to say UTF-8 tab, then UTF-8, let's say DOS. Okay, DOS is the old name for Windows. So if I say enter, okay, now I need to say save. Okay, actually, yeah, save the file xx DOS. Okay, let's do it again. And it's not okay. Anyway, I saved it, but this part is not updated. Okay, so let's close this file, reopen it. Set buffer coding system, UTF-8 DOS. Okay. I think this is a Emacs bug. I'm not sure why you have to do it twice, but you can see now that Unix is gone. So save it again. You see. So that, I don't think this is a great design, but because Emacs, when your current encoding system is the same as your operating system's convention, then it doesn't display anything. You can see there. So anyway, that's how you change file encoding in Emacs, change Newline conventions. Okay, and okay, so what questions? Any questions? Hello, Jonathan. Hello, Ryan. Are those bucking springs I hear? No, that's not bucking spring. That's Cherry MX Red. This keyboard you are looking at. I'm not. So Moore says I'm much more interested in how people encode big data. What do you mean by that? There's nothing special about big data. Any data you have, any data is saved as binary. Okay, it's when you save to file, doesn't matter what kind of storage system, it's saved, essentially as a bunch of numbers, binary digits. Okay, now yeah, doesn't matter it's big data or image file or text file, whatever. When you store something on a computer, it's a sequence of bytes. Gonna compile my text files for every operating system. What? I don't see what you mean. So anyway, so that's Emacs issue. So okay, so let's see. What are we going to talk about next? So I'm talking. So let's go to So I want to explain, we explain what it is, we explain ASCII control characters, we explain, show how to insert line feed and control characters in Emacs. Okay, the way you do that is, so if you want to insert a line feed, okay, so if you want to insert a carriage return, you press Control Q, then Control M, okay, that's a carriage return. Now if you want to insert a line feed, Control Q, Control J, okay. Now because, like I said before, because Control J, the line feed, is what Emacs use to represent the new line, so you don't even see it. So it's actually same as when you press return. So let's do it again. So let's see. So for example, something. So I want to insert a line feed in between, okay? So Control Q, Control J. You see, it's simply just, it's like you don't see it. So if you want to, so that's how you insert control characters in Emacs. So let me show you what it means. So if we look at ASCII table again, so let's say, how do you insert the bell? So there is a bell character. So you can see there's a bell character. So how do you insert that in Emacs? You can do the same way. So the bell character is represent, the correct notation is G. So each of these control characters, they have several notations. So you have decimal code point, in decimal code point, in hexadecimal, and you have then you have abbreviation. For example, the abbreviation null for the code point 0. Then you have the correct notation. Okay, so here's the correct notation for these control characters. Then you have the Unix C convention of escape mechanism. Okay, this is actually the not I don't think it's a good design. So, but this is what we are used to. Everyone knows about /n and /r and /t. That's the most common. So you have different notations for these characters, and one of the and Unicode also came up with a character to represent these control characters. You see, those are Unicode. So for example, we can actually copy that. Let's see. So you see, copy this and paste it here. Let's magnify. Okay, so you can see each one of these is actually a Unix character. So if I put a cursor here, I call describe character. You can see Emacs tell me it's this character, code point 9216, because this is a Unicode character that represents, that's a representation for this null character, control character null. But this Unicode character itself is code point 9216. And you can see the name of this character is symbol for null. So that's pretty new. That's a Unicode created a notation, a character to represent these control characters. And the correct notation, let's see. So the correct notation is one of the oldest. So the correct notation it is simply alphabetical. For example, it's just ABC, A, B, C, D, E. So that is why the line feed is J. You might be wondering, why is line feed J? Because, it's just alphabetical. And the carriage return happened to be M. And the tab, the vertical tab happened to be I. So that's an I. So I can insert a tab. Let me show you. I can insert a tab by pressing Control Q. Okay, I'm using a Vorak keyboard. Then Control I. I is this key. Okay, so you see, that's a tab. Now show space. You see, that's a tab. So that is why, that's an explanation of this correct notation. Okay, that's an explanation of the different notations for these control characters. And we also have the escape syntax. That's from C. When you inside the string, you represent these characters by this escape mechanism. Okay, the string syntax is another interesting question, but let's skip it today. Okay, so there's a question. So Vice Q says, why do you say it's better to use just carriage return rather than line feed? Well, you see, carriage return, it makes the most logical sense. What do you, like, for example, what do you think? If you ask a common question, if you ask average people, carriage return, carriage return versus form feed, carriage return is more intuitive because came from the typewriter. You return, you press the return key. You see, even correspond to the keyboard return key. Return, you move the cursor from the right, return to the original position on the left. That's a kind of history, mechanical typewriters. So you can see history of mechanical typewriters here. So let's see. Okay, so you have here several of the ancient mechanical typewriters, and back then even the return key is not standardized. So on this one, where is the return key? This is what? This is French or what? They have a MR, but I don't see a return. But anyway, pretty soon, I think very early on, it became standard. Look at this one. The numbers are on the side. You see, and they have two space bars. And this well, another interesting thing about this one is that it's orthogonal. You mechanical keyboard nerds, this is not staggered. Typically you have this weird staggering. This is orthogonal. Okay, so this one is Smith Premier typewriter from what year? 1896. So anyway, let's get back to focus on the return key. So I want to show you, and by the way, on this typewriter, this is a space bar. Okay, the two things on the side, that's the space bar. Okay. Oh yeah, carriage return. Why you don't see a carriage return key? Because back then you have this thing, the mechanical bar, you hold it and you push it to the left to move the head, the whole. That's why the mechanism to the left. Okay, that's why you don't see a return key. So is there a picture where I show? Yeah, here I guess. Well, the picture is not too big. You see that bar? Okay, so but I can show you. Wait, I can show you one of the. You'll see the carriage return bar is emulated in this retro keyboard. Okay, so here. Okay. You see that bar? It does nothing on this keyboard. This is a emulation of the retro style, but it's just a modern keyboard. But that bar, so why do they have that bar? That's a carriage return. You push that all the way to the left. So, so that's this bar. Okay, so why is it return? Well, you return the whole thing, the carriage. That's the thing. Carriage return. Then it became computer's character carriage return. Then it becomes a key return key. Return to the original position. And also another. Let me show you another. So this is all intertwined together. That's history. That's how we got what we have. That's why. Many things maybe doesn't make sense, but there's a reason for that. So why is it, for example, why is it called carriage return? Why don't you just call it return? Why don't you just call it enter? And form feed, of course, line feed. You have line feed and form feed. They also have their own history. But if you are asking me which one is more logical, I would say today, given if we have to use one of these, these ASCII table, which we are stuck with. Because if you invent new, then your system is gonna be not compatible with anything else. You can't use anything. So if we given these control characters, we have to choose one to represent the new line. I would say today, this character is the most intuitive, carriage return. Okay, and why is it called so carriage? Why is it called carriage? Well, because that mechanical thing is called carriage. And also, let me show you a return symbol. Okay, keyboard. For example, keyboard keys. So here we look at keyboard keys, and we have the enter key, many different designs for the enter key, many different shapes, and we have the symbolic representation, which symbol to represent the return character, the new line character. For example, that's another interesting question. For example, as we have seen, Okay, for example, when in Emacs, I turn on white space mode to show the white space. You can see I'm using a paragraph sign. So, but if I want to, I can also use, okay, let me show you. Okay, so, okay, that's a paragraph sign. Okay, that's a Unicode, code point 182. The name of that character is called Pico sign. Okay, that. But I can use also, okay, I can also use this symbol to represent the new line. Okay, so this character is Unicode code point 9166, and the name is return symbol. Okay, but I can also use enter. Okay, there's another interesting character. Now this Unicode character, the name is called enter key. Okay, the old name, now they have a new name. The new name is up arrowhead between two horizontal bars, but it was called enter key. So what is this key about? So it's, so that's history. So you have the return key, but on the numerical keypad, you have also a key called enter. So usually this represents that key. But again, if you look at Mac keyboard, some of them call this key enter, some of them call it return. So, so you have lots of these interesting things. And another thing I want to say is that you can also use this character. For example, all these characters can be used to represent the enter key. For example, on the Mac, if you look at Mac's documentation, Apple's documentation, they use this hooked arrow. Okay, so the character of this character is called leftwards arrow with hook. So you see, here's Apple's documentation, and you can see the character there. And they use this enter symbol to represent the enter key on the number pad. Okay, so that's all the interesting things. So right now we are talking about how does this relate to the control character. This is a graphical representation of the concept of new line. So it's kind of confusing. So let me show you. Okay, so it's really interesting. So you see, let me explain. So you see this paragraph sign. So why should you use a paragraph sign instead of one of, which one is the best? So if you are design, for example, if you are design or an editor and you want to show white space or in a word processor, so you have the question, which one of these should you use to represent a new line? For me, I actually customized my Emacs, to show to use a pure sign, but these two will also make sense, but this not so much because it's kind of outline. And also, it also depends on which font you use. And this one wouldn't be appropriate because that represents a enter. So you can see even it's almost exactly the same thing, but there's so many different aspects, you know. So let me write it down. So let me explain. So what's the issue here? So let's shrink to the original font size. What is this? Keyboard block, close. Let's shrink to the original font size, show in browser. So we talked about that. Yeah, this is a talk show today. Delete that. So we are talking about, so what are we talking about? Let me show you, okay? Different aspects of the unprintable characters. The unprintable characters themselves, encoding of it, okay? Encoding, so you have ASCII, you have Unicode, but you have also EBDEC. You know, all these issues, if you just look up Wikipedia, you'll also find it. Encoding of it, then notation for them. Okay, so you have different notations for them. As you can see, you need the different notations for them. Then you also have representation for their concepts, such as, you know, this paragraph sign, this, you know, return key symbols, or you know, used on keyboard or used in a text editor. So you have these different aspects of them. So show in browser. So that's what we talked about. Okay, what else? You know, so this. So actually, so let's go back. Let's see. How long I've been talking? We already talked for 1 hour. Wait. Okay, 50 minutes. And we also talked about, let's for example, let's copy that, paste it here. This is a representation of the keys. And we also, by the way, you know, we have representation, a symbol to represent a key on the keyboard. That's what these are, okay? Now, this is about a symbol to represent a key label, okay? Key label, which is actually pretty similar to this, okay? Key label issues. So, by the way, you can see a helm there. That's actually an ISO standard symbol to represent the control key. That's actually a ISO standard symbol to represent the control key. So you have many different variations. Then we have, let's see what we talked about. Then we have the shape of different control key. Okay, that's a bit unrelated. It's just about different shapes of the control key. This one is called fat ass enter. Europeans, usually the Europeans likes it. Big ass enter key, you know. So then the Japanese, I think the Japanese has this one. The Japanese, their convention is like that. Now this is the, you know, the horizontal shape is the American convention. Okay, so then we talked about, let's see what else. There's actually quite a few things I want to say about this. Oh yeah, this keyboard, why is it called carriage return? Why is there a word carriage? Okay, then we showed several of the typewriters. Okay, paste it here, okay, join the and make them order properly in the order we talked about them. Showing browser. Okay, we talked about all that. Motex is the one who began using line feed as the new line character. That's then Unix inherited from it. Then we talked about ASCII table. Okay, so today I think that's it. Actually, there's some we haven't started to talk about here doc, so which is the actual complexity when writing a shell script. So the problem, in the beginning of the video, we talked about I'm writing a PowerShell script you are looking at, and I want to replace a string, a multi-line string, in a bunch of files, and it turns out it didn't work. For some it worked. It's like a puzzle mystery. But if I change it, after so much testing, I realized if I, debugging, like I can't figure out what's going on. It should work. Everything it should work. But eventually I tried to delete, trial and error. I realized if I replace the multi-line string by just a single line, then it worked. Then I realized the problem is with the Newline convention. So what's the problem? So if you are writing PowerShell, so let me tell you about the here doc syntax. Okay, so what is a here doc? So in a programming language, usually you want to, you have a bunch of, you have a whole bunch of text, you want to represent them as a string, and the text may contain, double quotes, it may contain a double quote character or a single quote character. So you cannot just like quote them, because then you need to unquote each occurrences. So that's a pain. That's painful. So therefore, there's this syntax called here doc. It looks like this in PHP. Okay. So in PowerShell, this is a here doc. Okay. So I want to assign this string to a variable. This string is like Google Analytics, you'll find in every website. So I want to find it, I want to remove this, in my files. So it's multiple lines, and so I can just say this variable equals to, then using this syntax, that's a PowerShell's syntax for here doc. This kind of syntax is called here string. Meaning it's very interesting jargon. Okay, it means like here it is, just a big chunk of string. So this way you don't have to put escape, like you don't have to put like / quote like in Emacs, or in PowerShell the escape is the tick. Okay, so you don't have to use this. You can just paste it in. Then you can just find replace. You can see the replace line here. Okay. But it failed. So why does it fail? So eventually I realized that's because so it's fairly complex. Okay, if your current file, it depends on what's your current file's encoding. So if your current file's Newline, if this file is using the Unix line convention, and the file you want to replace are also Unix line convention, then it works. Okay. However, if this file, the PowerShell file, is in, let's say, Windows convention, but the files you are trying to find replace are Unix convention, then it doesn't work. It doesn't work when you have a here doc string that's, why? Because the current file, the PowerShell script file, is using the, there's a new line character at the end. So depending on how the current file is saved, what line convention it's using, you may have problem, finding that string. So eventually that's the reason. So that's an interesting question. Then I started to read a bunch of PowerShell. So there's a tool, like I said before. There's a tool in Unix in Unix. This is a very old problem, 30 years problem. There's a lot of tools to do that. So in Unix you have like we talked about, in Unix you have this Unix to DOS, DOS to Unix shell, tools. You can just run it on a whole bunch of files. But I was trying to find a proper solution on Windows. Now Windows PowerShell is supreme, so there must be a solution. There is indeed, but it turns out this very simple issue, or seemingly very simple, it's not that simple, because as we explained, even in Emacs there's a lot of complexities. This seemingly simple issue, if you look at PowerShell, let's look at PowerShell. So there's a lot of articles about it on the web, tracing back to 15 years ago. PowerShell began around 2003. So there's a lot of articles talking about that. Okay, like tons of them, and each person or each blog, they try to tell you how to do it. Okay, but it turns out, because when you actually look deep into the problem, it's not so simple, because there's a lot kind of issues. We talked about how editors or tools, they automatically add a line at the end of your file when you save it. So that happened in PowerShell until a few years later they added a new option to prevent that. So you look at all these things. Also you need to pay attention what year they are written, because you can see there's a lot of issues. So there's a Stack Overflow, but there is one particular article I want to try to tell you, this one. Okay, so this answer is written by a PowerShell developer, this guy, okay, MK Lemon. Okay, this article, this answer is a summary of all previous answers on Stack Overflow about how to replace line endings in PowerShell. What are the issues involved? So he looked at all the solutions, and he write a unified, state of the union answer, to this question. And in it, he mentioned that, so this is written in year 2018, okay, 3 years ago. He mentioned that on GitHub, on PowerShell, Microsoft GitHub, they actually tried to have a tool, building PowerShell script, so that you don't worry about this anymore. So imagine this issue has been around for 30 years. There's lots of tools that try to convert it. Seemingly simple. But for 15 years, PowerShell still don't have the solution. Okay. You can do it, but there's so many answers, different, each one uses different command. I haven't got into that yet. Today is probably too long, but I can explain the different solutions in PowerShell. For example, the best explanation is this guy. Okay, this guy is a classic old hacker. You look at, his website is called SS64. The writing style and web formatting is not so great, but however, he's got the best technical content. So in this page, he provides, let's turn on JavaScript. Maybe it'll make it look better. It doesn't. So in his website, he explains the technical detail, the best solution of using PowerShell to do this Newline convention. So this is the best technical content with respect to PowerShell, okay, this guy. So he also, for example, he explained the different ways of using PowerShell to read a file or write to a file. For example, you can see this line, these two lines. This is PowerShell, but however, he's calling the .NET function to do it. Meanwhile, he also explains somewhere here, here, of using the PowerShell command to do it. So they are both PowerShell, but they are using different methods. So he explained a little bit, not fully, about the differences, the pitfalls. Okay, so it's a fairly complex issue. Then, there are so many different people, trying to say what they think is right. Then we run into this PowerShell developer. So they are talking about, so this is 2008, they are 2018, 3 years ago. They are trying to come up with a solution, like one solution for all in PowerShell. But it seems, I haven't completely finished, I finished reading the whole thread. But apparently, to this day, there's no built-in solution. It doesn't seem to me. So far, I haven't seen it. So this 30 years old problem, that seems simple, but today you still don't have a solution in PowerShell after 15 years. Okay, and when reading this thread, okay, that's one topic. But now the next topic. When reading this thread yesterday, I spent several hours in detail. I actually learned a few things. Okay, what I learned that in this operating system, this Plan 9 or something, they are actually using the let's say let's search for Plan. Okay, Plan 9 is not here. Let's search for Inferno. Not here. Was it here? I'm pretty sure it's here. But anyway, in this thread, I learned that this operating where is it? Somewhere. Was it Plan 9 or Inferno or one of the new operating system that use carriage return? The same as the classic Mac OS 9 in 1990s. Okay, so that's one thing I learned. Another thing I learned is that the other critical thing I learned that solved a question I had for Emacs for years, is that when in Emacs, for example, set buffer file coding system. Okay, so you can see here. Okay, so let me show you. So you have all these encoding systems in Emacs. Now notice, okay, let's see UTF. Okay, now look at this, okay. Now notice that they combine the encoding with the Newline convention. For example, if we look at UTF-8, so you have UTF-8 DOS, that's a Windows line ending convention. You have UTF-8 Unix, that's a Unix or Linux convention. Then you have UTF-Mac. So Mac convention using carriage return. So they combined the concept of carriage return, the line ending convention, with the encoding concept. So for 10 years I have the question, why do they combine it? I think it should be separate. File encoding is one thing, okay? Line convention is another thing. But it turns out, I learned yesterday from reading this, they are connected. You cannot simply have a line convention without knowing what encoding it is. So I read, from this, their design, their PowerShell team. Then I realized, that's why Emacs also combined them. Okay, so because it kind of one has to do with the other. So that's what I learned. Okay, so I learned from this thread, the PowerShell team, that one of the Unix Plan 9 or something operating system is using the CR line convention. You can find that on Wikipedia, okay, by the way. So Wikipedia, so you can see Wikipedia has lots of details on that. And then you can look at the operating systems, okay? And by the way, Unicode came up with a bunch of new line code points. That's another topic we haven't covered. So now we are looking at the the conventions of the operating systems. They have a list somewhere. So all these are related kind of issues. So a seemingly simple issue, you have all these complexities. That's how fucked up our coding, our programming industry is. But right now, I'm trying to find how different operating systems, what they use. Okay, so here's a bunch of encoding systems. Here is operating system. There it is. Okay, so you see Unix, Linux, Multics, Amiga, BOS, they all use line feed. Now, Windows, DOS, and many of the old operating systems, Atari, DEC, RT, CPM, some of them I don't, CP/M, that's very old. Palm OS, they all use the, what we would call Windows convention, carriage return line feed. Oh, then here, so classic Mac OS 9, MIT Lisp machine, there it is, MIT Lisp machine. They all use the just carriage return, so that's why I think this is actually, I would say this is the most logical since 1990, okay? From modern point of view, if you want to disregard, the legacy, carriage return, because that's what's supposed to be, carriage return. So TSR-80, so these systems use carriage return. Then some other weird ones, they use actually others. QNX use RS. Now what is RS? RS C0 and control codes. Okay, I'm not sure what is RX. Which code point is RX? What? BS, we need to look at shortcut notations. Let's see. Oh, record separator. they use the record separator for Newline. Oh, that's interesting. So so a lot history is here. And what is this? This operating system, ZX80. They use, this is Sinclair, this is very popular computer in United Kingdom. I learned about this system uses a non-ASCII character set to represent Newline. Wow, that's interesting. What is this? Decimal value 118. Wow, they use an ASCII character set to represent Newline. So that's another thing I learned. So very interesting. So different operating systems uses different many interesting things. Oh, this is one of my questions back in 2009. So in 2009, I tried to learn PowerShell. Okay, I tried to learn PowerShell, and one of the problem is that I want to convert all my Bash scripts to PowerShell. Okay, that didn't, my road to PowerShell didn't went far, so I kind of abandoned until this year. I learned so much PowerShell. So if you guys are here, check out my PowerShell tutorials. The most succinct, the best tutorial for PowerShell. Okay, and you can learn it the easiest, and actual correct way, the most efficient tutorial. So, but back in 2009, I tried to learn PowerShell, and one of the first tasks is to convert all my Bash scripts to PowerShell. And one of the problem I encountered is the Newline problem, because in Bash, when you grab some file, the return text is, with the new Unix line convention, but not so on Windows. But I need the Unix, convention. So how do I, so that turns out, so then actually one of the Unix, the PowerShell inventor, okay, who is the guy? So let me show you the PowerShell. The PowerShell creator actually commented on my blog, okay? So let me show you where is that. Okay, so I have this old article, PowerShell for Unix people. So PowerShell versus Bash. So in every line, I have a Bash version to do something, and I show you a PowerShell version to do the same thing. Okay, so I had this blog in 2009 on Blogger. Okay, on the Google's, which is now gone. So I have this article, and the guy Jeffrey Snover, who created he's a creator of PowerShell. He answered like 5 or 7 of my questions. But however, one of the questions is, how do you get the PowerShell to behave just like the Unix tools, to have the Unix line ending? That question is not solved. Okay, he didn't answer, because it turns out, as we can see, as I learned now, that question to this day is not satisfactorily solved in PowerShell. There's just complexities. Okay, I think that's it for today, and I'm gonna read the comments, and we close in 5 minutes. I think probably nobody's watching my show. Wow, 9 people. And we haven't, there's more issues I want to talk about. We haven't got into the issue of the here doc design, the design of the here doc syntax, and the art of naming. Whether should it be called here doc or not doc or here string? I haven't talked about that yet. Okay, let me show you what that is. Okay, close that. Wait, reopen it, copy it, close it. Well, actually, copy this back to Emacs, close it, go down here, paste it. We need to have a record of what we talked about. So many things. Okay, PowerShell versus Bash. Yes. Yeah, close that. Then, okay, so ZX80. Okay, so then different operating systems. So one of the new one using carriage return is MIT this machine. Okay, yeah, so copy that. So these operating systems, OS that uses CR, like Mac OS Classic. I was thinking, so anyway, so that's good to know. That's great to know that. So you can observe different operating systems and their choice. This is for those of you who are interested in programming language design or protocol design or user interface design. I'm very much into design aspect of things. So therefore, a lot of my followers, you guys. So from this, you can see kind of the design issue. Although it's kind of a trivial issue, like it doesn't matter, you just use whatever. If you are a practical person, just use whichever that is the most widely used. Go with the CRLF or go with Linux, Unix. Well, Windows is actually far more widely used. So go with the CRLF, which historically came from the teletype machine. So that is actually the most widely compatible historical one. The choice is carriage return line feed. Okay, if you are a practical person. But if everybody is a practical person. Like, who should worry? Don't worry about fucking useless things. Get on with your life. Follow the, get in line, follow with the tradition. Then Apple will never be invented. Okay, Apple computer, Steve Jobs, he's got an eye for design. Without Apple, you will not have CD player. You will not have DVD player. You will not have USB. You will not have GUI. Okay, graphical user interface, where you can click and select, and you will not have mouse. You will not have graphical user interface. Okay, now some of you might say, oh, well, but sorry, you are wrong, but the mouse is invented by the the mother of all inventions, and by Xerox and so on. Well, that's true, but the vast majority of inventions that we use today, that you come to know, keyboard or whatever, is not because of the inventor. Rather, it's because of an entrepreneur. So Steve Jobs, he actually didn't invent graphical user interface. He didn't invent the mouse. He didn't invent the USB. He didn't invent CD on a computer. He didn't invent DVD on a computer. He didn't invent the concept of online music streaming. But he is an entrepreneur, and he didn't invent cell phone. Okay, but he is responsible for the fact that we are all using it today. So who do you thank to? Well, the original inventor, the engineer, usually are important, but it is the entrepreneur that made things happen. So of you people, you nerds, that's an important thing you need to realize. Okay, so don't think, oh, Steve Jobs, he's just nothing because he didn't invent mouse. No, he didn't invent anything. No, you are an idiot if you think that way. Okay, I think that's it for today. Bye, guys. Yeah, we haven't get into the design of the here doc. the design of the here doc. Let me quickly show you. So I'm done. Okay, I'm done today. This is getting too long. This is getting it's like 12:30. It's getting 90 minutes. The design of here doc. Okay, very interesting. So you have the PHP has a syntax like that. Then Perl has a syntax. So I got my Perl tutorial, which I did not include the here doc syntax in here. Bash also have here docs, and PowerShell also have here docs. So PowerShell here docs I can show you in my tutorial. You can see it here. The PowerShell here docs. So you go here, string. So this is a PowerShell here docs convention. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, bye guys. So let me read the comments, answer some questions quickly. So this keyboard, if you are wondering, this is called Kinesis Advantage 2. Okay. Why bash on Windows when you can? Because bash is no good on Windows. Well, bash versus PowerShell. Okay, let me tell you guys. So PowerShell, from pure technical point of view, the language design, the syntax, the power, the semantics, from a pure language design point of view, PowerShell is a magnitude better than bash. Okay, in terms of the syntax, the readability, the speed, the ease of use, PowerShell is like much better than bash. Bash, and there's a good reason for that. PowerShell is, bash is designed 30 years ago. PowerShell was designed 15 years ago. The difference in years make a huge difference. In general, the later languages, are better than older languages in generally speaking, if everything else considered equal. Because, if they differ by a year or 5, doesn't matter. But if two different languages, their design year differ by more than 10 years, that has some significance. Okay, so first of all, I want to make a point. Technically speaking, from a pure technical point of view, PowerShell is much better than Bash. Okay, this is purely technical point of view, disregarding other factors such as open source or not, or what company, or compatibility, or which one is more widely used, and so on. Okay. Now that's so the second thing I want to mention is that you want to use a shell language that is native for your operating system. So the best shell, if you are on Linux, the best shell is Bash. Okay, Bash or Z shell or something similar. Bash, C, Z shell. Among them, we can compare, but that's a different issue. But my point here is that when it comes to languages or shell, basically, you want to use the one that's native to the operating system. So on Linux, it's Bash. Okay, Bash, Z shell, and whatever. On Windows, you want to stick with PowerShell. Okay, because there are for many reasons. Because one, first of all, it comes with the OS. Every Windows is bundled with PowerShell. For Bash, you have to install it. Then you have to, different versions of from different people. So anyway, my point is that you want to stick with the native shell if you can. That's the best native to your operating system. Okay. Now, the third thing I want to say is that PowerShell is all open source today. The entire .NET is open source. Okay, that's what Microsoft is doing. They bought GitHub. The entire PowerShell is open source. But so I think PowerShell is much better, and also it's open source, and also it's so it's available. PowerShell you can install, you can run it on Mac or Linux. In fact, I have a screenshot. You see this is PowerShell on Mac, and here's a PowerShell on Linux. Okay, you can just download and install. But because of history, on Linux you have a lot resistance to PowerShell. Very strong resistance. I mean, I'm probably most of you will laugh at PowerShell. Even you don't know, you don't know nothing about it. Like in general, if you are the 4chan type of people, in general, when you have an opinion, after you studied PowerShell for half a year, then you tell me, oh, I don't think PowerShell is better than Bash. I think Bash is better. Then I respect your opinion. Okay, but the opinions I hear, all the people, their opinion is like they don't know nothing. They never coded one line of PowerShell. But they're gonna tell you, look at that idiot. He's doing PowerShell. That's you are an idiot. So anyway, I think PowerShell is better, and I think it's also open source. But the question of on Linux, there's a strong resistance, and I don't see the day that it'll be a long time if PowerShell is ever gonna replace Bash on Linux, because the Linux people, they are not going to. So anyway, but for personal use, I would recommend PowerShell. If I'm on Linux, I don't like Windows because it's possible there's lots of problems. It's possible by next year. I'm probably not going to switch to Windows 11. So sometimes in the future, I'll be back on the Mac or possibly Linux. So if I'm on the Mac, I'm probably gonna stick with either PowerShell or Z shell, because Z shell is the Mac's default now. Why? Because the GNU, the Free Software Richard Stallman fuckhead, they want to push for GPL3. That's why on the Mac, they switched away about 3 years ago, the Mac Apple, the default shell is no longer bash. It's Z shell. Why? Because the GPL3, the Richard Stallman idiot, okay? That's why. So, Free Software Foundation, they are dying. Nobody knows about it anymore. So, but if I'm on Linux, maybe bash. Anyway, so that's it for the anything else. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just read the comments and that's it for today. Okay. If you have a question for me, I'd put my name to it. Okay, so I got a haircut, so you won't be seeing me the tech end boss. I'm no longer the tech end boss guy. Okay, bye guys. Thank you. And donate. Don't forget, the most important part of the YouTube is that you pay for the servers. Okay, so you think you enjoyed the show. Either you learned something technical or you enjoyed as comedy, entertainment. Buy me a drink, whatever a drink costs in your country. Okay, so you can see my PayPal, my Amazon, my stuff. Okay. Windows, hiding Windows. Usually Windows, hiding Windows. Okay. I use fish shell on Linux. Okay, that's good for you. That's a kind of a GUI shell. Oh my god, stream is full of tiny window manager users. You can try Sway the exact same config unless you are stuck with NVIDIA. So what are we talking? Sway. Okay, I don't know. I heard there's a new tech Sway. I don't know what that is about. Sway. What the fuck is Sway? So Sway GPU NVIDIA on Sway tutorial. So what the fuck is Sway? Microsoft, wait. What? So anyway, I don't know what is Sway. So NVIDIA on Sway tutorial. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so Microsoft Sway is a presentation program and is part of Microsoft Office. No, I don't think that's what you're talking about, right? What is Sway? Microsoft Sway is a presentation program and is part of Microsoft Office. Okay, I don't think that's a one. That's a let me unlock laptop on the machines. Do you prefer tags or workspaces for your desktop? I don't use tags and I don't use workspaces. You might have seen my article. I use only one single desktop. No others. Okay, remove them. I stick with one single virtual screen or whatever you call it. Bye guys. Oh, Sway the Wayland Windows Manager. Okay, that's got a long way to go because I just learned that Emacs is not compatible with Wayland yet. Wayland's got ways to go. Okay, Sway is a tiling window. Oh my god, another tiling Windows Manager and Wayland compositor. Composite my ass. About 10 years ago when I was on Linux, I heard, oh, there's a file compositor, but then when you actually use it and dig deep into it, it's crap, the worst technology possible. But every day you just hear the Linux viewer, whoa, rotating cubes, like like you can switch your virtual desktop with a rotating cube. That was fashionable like 15 years ago, but you don't see it today. When you actually use Linux, like daily, I dig deep into the technology. It's crap. The worst crap possible. Then you got on Linux tiling window manager. Let me tell you guys, okay, tiling window managers on Linux, you have the, how do you call it? The Windows they are not, I have articles, so many articles, I forgot where I have to search for it. The Windows, how they call tear, okay? When you drag a window, you have tear on your screen. That's Linux. That's the average, normal, typical Linux. You have tears on your screen. In one of these tiling window managers, rat poison, for example, let me show you, okay? Let's go to Linux. Okay, so the entire Linux tutorial, then you go down. Those are all about commands used for GUI app names. Okay, not that. Then you want to go to the so this is what my screen looks like in 2012. That's the year I was going to die. 2012 on a puny, trash Walmart PC. Okay, so I was on Linux. So so I dived deep into all these technologies, XFC. These two are actually the best. Okay, LXD and SXFC. These two are the best because I have a puny machine, no memory and so on, and these are the most lean. Okay, and they they are not what's it called, the technology, the buffer. Okay, they don't use a buffer in the screen ending. What's a then you have to get into the details of the thing, what they call. But anyway, the screen buffer. Okay, they are the windowing system. They don't use the screen buffer. So anyway, the point, the bottom line is that often you see it every week. Okay, you'll have tear, screen tear, like or like part of your window that is already deleted, but you'll see it's still there. That's Linux. Okay, the tiling windows. Fuck, and that happens, and then you might think, oh, all these Linux cool kids, they are talking about rat poison or i3. And so so I thought, okay, I'm going to install. You try them; they are all the same problem. The fucking Linux people dribbling. They don't know nothing. What you guys are thinking? They all have the same problem. Screen tear. Okay, I'm an average person. I'm not trying to do things fancy. When I delete the window, it left a shadow there. What the fuck is that? That's Linux. Compis is one of the earliest. Yeah. Bye, guys. Screen tearing happens often. Not when you for example, when you actually work with Linux, such as when you actually do lots of things, you have problems. Then, of course, it doesn't happen to you because you have you have a system, lots of memory or something. Each person is different. But the point is that I'm not trying to do anything special or esoteric, and it just happened. It does happen for everyday average user. Sometimes so for example, I can actually tell you an example when it happens. Okay, but it's been a while. I have to think about. If I look at my articles, I will know. Okay, so if I look at my articles, let's go to Linux. Okay, so look at some of these articles. Okay, so this is about finding the command name for graphical user app. You need to do that. If you are very technical like me. Okay, so let me show. So when does it happen? So these are the different image viewers on Linux. Then, I tried them all. The different image viewers to assess, to judge which one is the best design. Many of them are just totally crap. Linux fuck. The Linux idiot. They are crap. Not in every way, in every fucking way, worse than Windows. Many of them, in every fucking way. Fuck the Linux people. Okay, so I have anyway. That's it. I'm not going to. That's it. I made my point. You can decide whether it's true or not. Bye, guys.